There's a small town in the Ashanti region where saying a certain name out loud will make people flinch. Not the polite kind of ignoring you. An actual flinch.
Akosua!
Like a sudden noise just went off, followed by a scramble to change the subject so fast you'll wonder if you imagined the whole exchange. I found this out the hard way. The name belongs to my mother, Akosua. I'm telling you this because I'm the only person left who still says it on purpose. I grew up in Accra, and for 19 years the story was simple. My mother had died when I was a baby. My aunt Adwa raised me, her younger sister, a seamstress who never married, and she did it with enough love that I never thought to go looking for cracks in the story. The cracks found me anyway. I was 20 when I found the letters, tucked in an old biscuit tin on top of Adwa's wardrobe. Not hidden exactly, just out of sight unless you happened to be dusting up there, which I was, because she'd thrown her back out and needed the help. They weren't letters to me. They were letters Adwa had written and never sent. The kind people write when they need somewhere to put a feeling, even if no one will ever read it. She kept apologizing in them, kept saying she should have done something differently, and she kept writing my mother's name, Akosua, over and over, the way you'd worry a stone smooth in your pocket. My mother hadn't died. The letters made that much clear, even without explaining where she'd gone or why. I confronted Adwa that evening. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she didn't try to deny any of it. She just looked tired in a way I'd never seen on her, like she'd been holding something heavy for 20 years and had finally been allowed to set it down, only to discover that setting it down didn't feel like relief. It felt like grief that had simply been delayed. "She's in Kwahu," she said eventually, "a village near there. I haven't seen her in 19 years. I send money sometimes, through someone who knows someone. That's all I have left to give her. Why haven't you seen her? Why did you tell me she was dead?" She studied her hands for a while before answering. Because it was easier than explaining what actually happened. And because, if I'm honest, I still don't fully understand some of it myself. 3 weeks later, against Adwa's quiet but persistent objections, I went to find her. The village wasn't hard to locate. Finding my mother inside it was another matter entirely. I asked the first 3 people I met: a man selling phone credit, 2 women carrying water, a boy who couldn't have been older than 10, whether they knew a woman named Akosua. Every one of them reacted the same way. A flinch, a pause, then some version of, "I don't know who that is," delivered in a tone that made it obvious they did. I tried a different tack with an older woman selling kenki near the village center. I told her I was looking for my mother, that her name was Akosua, and that I'd heard she lived nearby. She set down her ladle. "You shouldn't say that name here," she said quietly. "Not loudly, not to strangers." "Why not?" She glanced around first, the way people do right before saying something they'll deny later if asked. "Because of what happened, because of what people decided she was." "What did they decide she was?" She picked the ladle back up.
Careful, my child.
"Go find Auntie Mansa, near the old schoolhouse, edge of town. She'll tell you what I won't."
When you pass the old
Auntie Mansa was old in the way that suggests someone has outlived most of her contemporaries and made an uneasy peace with becoming the village's keeper of difficult history. She let me in without much surprise, as if she'd been expecting this exact visit for 19 years. "You have her eyes," she said, before I'd even finished introducing myself. She told the story slowly. "The way you tell something you've been waiting 2 decades to finally say out loud to someone with a right to hear it. My mother had married into the village at 22. My father, a man whose name I'd never once heard before that conversation, died 18 months later suddenly of something nobody could quite explain. Within the same year, 3 more deaths followed: a child, an elderly farmer, and my father's younger brother. 4 deaths, one young widow at the center of all of them. They said she was a witch, Auntie Mansa said, that she'd brought something with her when she married in. People stopped greeting her. Mothers told their children to stay away. Eventually, a group of men came to her house and gave her until morning to leave, or they wouldn't be responsible for what happened to her. And she just left? She had a baby. Auntie Mansa looked at me directly. "You? There was nowhere she could take you that felt safe, so her sister came from Accra to raise you instead, while your mother stayed to try to clear her name. Leaving without doing that would have meant living the rest of her life as the woman who ran because she was guilty. Did she clear it? A long pause. No, she said. She found something worse than the accusation instead. What my mother discovered, according to Auntie Mansa, was that the deaths hadn't stopped because the village had correctly identified and dealt with the person responsible. They'd stopped because something else had already finished what it set out to do. And her accusations simply gave everyone a convenient place to put their fear. There was a shrine outside the village, not the kind people protected, the kind people avoided. Locals called it simply the one who counts, and it predated even the oldest family's claim to that land. The story, as much as anyone still told it, was that this entity attached itself to households going through major change, a new marriage, a new arrival, and collected a toll measured not in money, but in proximity. People close to the change. People who mattered to whoever stood at the center of it. My father was new to marriage. I was new to the world. The household had changed, and something old and patient had taken notice. My mother spent 2 years trying to make the village understand this, because blaming a woman is simpler than reckoning with something that has no shape and nothing you can negotiate with. She never succeeded, but she also never left. She built a small, solitary life at the edge of that village, watched but never quite spoken to, the unofficial evidence of something nobody wanted to examine too closely. Over time, the ban on her name shifted from punishment into something more like a collective flinch. The village's way of looking away from a wound that had never fully closed. She's half a mile from here, Auntie Mansa told me. Past the schoolhouse, where the road stops being a road. She still leaves food for it once a month, has done for 19 years. She believes that if she keeps it satisfied enough, it stays at the shrine and leaves the rest of the village alone. Does it work? Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture did. It worked, she said, until you came looking for her this week. I found my mother's house exactly where Auntie Mansa described. Small, neat, set apart, with a worn path leading from the back door toward a tree line whose significance I didn't yet understand. She opened the door before I even knocked. I don't know how she knew. Maybe 19 years of watching that path teaches you to recognize footsteps you've never actually heard before. She looked older than the photograph hidden in Adwoa's biscuit tin, but mostly she just looked tired. The kind of tired that stops being temporary and settles permanently into a face until it becomes simply who someone is. You shouldn't have come, she said, not unkindly, almost gently. I wanted to meet you. I know. She stepped back to let me in anyway. But you've been saying my name in this village. More than once, from what I hear. People talk even after 20 years of not talking. I didn't realize it mattered that much. It's never been about the name itself, she said, closing the door behind us. It's about what saying it loudly enough, often enough, in the wrong place, might wake up. The village stopped saying it to avoid drawing attention back to this house, to me, to whatever's still watching, deciding if I'm worth the trouble of remembering. I asked if she thought it had heard me. She didn't answer that directly. Instead, she asked, very quietly, whether I'd told anyone where I was going. I had. I'd told Adwoa exactly which village, exactly which direction, exactly how long I'd be gone. My mother closed her eyes. Then it already knows there's a new household, she said. A daughter, returning. That's exactly the kind of change it noticed once before. I stayed 3 days. I wanted longer. My mother, gently but firmly, wouldn't allow it. On the third night, with the calm of someone who's made an irreversible decision and stopped arguing with herself about it, she told me she was going to the shrine that night. Alone. Earlier than her usual monthly visit, and with far more than the usual offering. I asked why early. Why more? Because you arrived, she said. Because something changed in this household for the first time in 19 years, and I'd rather it look at me again than start looking at you. I wanted on record that I tried to stop her, because of how people in the village described it afterward, as if she'd simply wandered into the dark out of some inherited foolishness, rather than something closer to the opposite of foolishness entirely. She left before dawn, while I was still arguing with her in the doorway. I followed at a distance because she told me not to, and I have never once in my life been good at doing what I'm told when it actually matters. I found the shrine 40 minutes later. I found her sandals at its edge, set neatly to one side, the way you'd leave shoes before entering somewhere sacred. I did not find her. The village searched for 3 days. Auntie Mansa told me gently that they wouldn't find anything. She was right. Eventually I went back to Accra because Adwoa needed me, and because there was nothing left in that village for me except a name people still won't speak, and a path to a shrine I've walked exactly once and have no intention of walking again. I keep thinking about what my mother said the day I arrived, that it was never about the name itself. That saying it out loud was just a way of drawing attention back to a door that something old and patient had been quietly watching for 19 years, waiting for the household behind it to change again. I changed it. I walked through that door as her daughter, returning, and something noticed, the same way it had noticed a new marriage and a new birth 2 decades before. My mother spent 19 years keeping it satisfied enough to leave a forgotten village alone. In the end, it took her instead of starting on me. I don't know if that was an accident of timing or exactly the trade she meant to make all along. I've stopped trying to decide which possibility frightens me more.